Dear beloved, thank you for choosing to be part of this growing community. Your decision to join us is a true act of love and support. It means a lot to see people standing with others as they share their life stories, experiences, and testimonies. Here, you'll find real stories that can inspire change, build your faith, and lift you up when you need it most. We also kindly ask that you like, comment, and share our videos. Your support helps us reach more people and make a bigger impact. God bless you. My name is Kaira. For 12 long years, I carried a pain so deep that even words trembled to describe it. To the world, I was the wife of a respected imam in Sinjar in Iraq, a quiet town known for its faith and traditions. People came to my husband for counsel, for blessings, for healing. He was loved and revered, a man of wisdom and devotion. And I, his wife, was expected to be an example of patience, peace, and faith. But behind the soft smiles and gentle greetings, my heart was breaking. Because I was barren. Month after month, year after year, I waited for the cry of a child that never came. Each new moon brought hope, and each fading moon carried it away again. Women who once called me sister began to avoid my eyes. Some whispered that I was cursed, that my womb had been locked by unseen hands. Others pitied me with words that hurt more than silence. I prayed. Oh, how I prayed. I fasted until my body trembled, wept quietly at night so my husband would not hear. But I heard him too sometimes, in the next room, calling out to God with a voice so broken it tore at my soul. What have we done wrong, O Lord? He would whisper. And I would press my ear to the wall, wanting to tell him that I too prayed, that I too waited. But shame held me back. In our world, a woman's worth was tied to her womb. And I had none. We sought help everywhere, doctors, elders, traditional healers. I drank bitter herbs, sat through countless prayers, offered sacrifices, followed every instruction. But nothing changed. As the years passed, my mother-in-law grew restless. A man must not die childless, she often said. Rumors began to swirl that my husband might take another wife. I told myself I would not be angry, that if it made him happy, I would endure it quietly. But inside, I was crumbling. Every naming ceremony felt like a wound reopened. I would sing, dance, hand out gifts, and then return home to cry in silence. My faith began to fade. Prayer became duty, not devotion. I started to believe that maybe God had forgotten me. Still, deep inside, a tiny spark refused to die. I remembered the stories of Sarah, of Hannah, of Mary, women whom God remembered in their waiting. And sometimes I whispered, maybe one day, He will remember me too. It was a quiet night, one of those nights when even the wind seems to sleep. My husband had traveled to Kano for a religious meeting, leaving me alone in our small courtyard home. The silence pressed around me like a heavy blanket. I lit a small lantern and opened the Quran, hoping to find peace in its verses. But my mind would not rest. My eyes burned from crying. When exhaustion finally came, I lay on my mat and closed my eyes. That's when it happened. A stillness filled the air, not ordinary silence, but something deeper, alive. My body froze, yet my heart began to race. It felt as though the room was full of someone, not frightening, but peaceful. Then, deep within me, not through my ears, but in my heart, I heard a voice. Soft, yet powerful. Gentle, yet undeniable. It said, "Your waiting is over. By this time next year, you will carry life in your womb, in my name." My eyes flew open. My hands trembled. The lantern flickered beside me. No one was there. Was I dreaming? Losing my mind? But the peace that followed, it stayed with me. It was like light resting on my chest. I could not deny it. I told no one. Not even my husband when he returned. How could I explain it? He would think it was exhaustion or emotion. But deep within, I knew. Something sacred had happened. From that night, my prayers changed. I stopped begging. I started believing. I prayed not from desperation, but from trust. Weeks turned into months. One morning, as I prepared breakfast, a sudden wave of sickness hit me. My hands shook, my heart raced, and I ran outside. Could it be? When my monthly cycle didn't come, I told my husband. My voice trembled. He stared at me, silent at first, then tears filled his eyes. For the first time in years, he held me close and wept. That night, as I lay in his arms, I whispered to myself. The voice was true. As my belly began to grow, so did the whispers around us, but this time, whispers of wonder. God has remembered her, some said. Perhaps she went to strange places for help, others murmured. I ignored them all. Every flutter inside me reminded me of that night, the night heaven spoke to my heart. My husband became tender again, protective. But behind his smile, I sometimes caught a flicker of fear, as though he could not understand what had happened. Once, he asked quietly, Zainab, did you take any special medicine, or see anyone while I was away? I smiled and said, no. I only prayed. And God answered. One afternoon, I read again the story of Mary, the mother of Jesus. I had always admired her faith, her silence, her courage. Though I was taught she was only a righteous woman, something deeper stirred within me as I read. Tears filled my eyes. Somehow, I felt her pain, her shame, her faith. That night, I had a dream. A light brighter than the sun filled my room, yet it did not hurt my eyes. I could not see a face, only the outline of presence, peace, warmth, and awe. And in that light, I heard again the same voice. The child within you is chosen for my purpose. This life is not yours to claim, but mine to use. When I woke, tears soaked my face. The warmth lingered. I knew this was no ordinary child. This was grace taking form. When the time came to give birth, I was unafraid. It felt as though unseen hands carried me through the pain. And after hours of labor, I heard a cry, a strong, beautiful sound that filled the room. The midwife placed him in my arms. My husband entered moments later and fell to his knees, whispering, a gift from heaven. We called him our miracle. But peace did not last. Soon the whispers returned, darker this time. Women stared too long at the baby. My mother-in-law grew distant. Even my husband's eyes began to change. One night, he sat before me, pale and trembling. Zainab, he said softly, tell me the truth. How did this happen? My heart sank. I told him everything, about the voice, the peace, the promise. But as I spoke, his face hardened. You speak of voices and dreams, he said. Do you know how dangerous that sounds? From that day, he prayed alone. The laughter left our home. The same miracle that had brought us together now began to tear us apart. Then one night, I heard him whispering with another imam outside. She has been reading forbidden books, my husband said. She spoke of Mary, and a spirit. I fear she has fallen under deception. Tears stung my eyes. The same man who once prayed for a miracle now doubted the one God gave him. Days later, something happened that neither of us expected. My husband woke in the night, trembling, shouting my name. When I rushed to him, his face was pale as the moon. He said he had seen a man in radiant white standing beside our baby. The man looked at him with compassion and said, do not fear. This child is from light, not darkness. What has begun in your home is holy. From that moment, my husband was changed. He spoke little, slept little, prayed much. He was a man wrestling with heaven. But word spread fast. People whispered that our child carried a strange spirit, that I had mixed Christian teachings with Islam. We were no longer welcome in our own home. One night, the elders came. Their faces were hard, their questions sharp. What book were you reading when this happened? I answered softly, I was reading about Mary, the one God favored. A murmur rippled through the room. You mean from the Christian Bible? One asked. When I nodded, silence fell, the kind that feels like judgment. If you haven't comment, or share, please do. That night, my husband said quietly, we must leave, Imulkaira, they will not understand. We packed before dawn and walked away from everything we had built. We found refuge in a small town far from Sinjar. A kind Christian family took us in. They fed us, clothed us, and treated us not as strangers but as family. It felt strange at first, to be loved with no condition. But their kindness melted something inside us. My husband spoke little, but one evening as he held our baby, he said, the man I saw, I know now it was Jesus. He showed me that truth is not bound by religion but by the heart that seeks it. From that night, everything changed. We prayed together again, not out of ritual, but out of love. We read the Word, quietly, by candlelight. My husband, once an imam, became a humble servant. He worked as a carpenter's helper, hands once used for holy books now calloused with labor. Yet I had never seen him so peaceful. We had lost everything, our name, our home, our honor. But in losing all, we found peace. Years passed. Our son grew strong, wise beyond his years. He often said things far beyond his age, words of light, of comfort, of truth. Sometimes, I would watch him sleep and feel the same presence that had filled my room that night long ago. And I knew, our story was only beginning. Women began to come to me, women carrying the same pain I once carried. Barrenness, shame, rejection. They came weeping, whispering their stories. And I would tell them mine. I prayed not with long words, but with faith born from waiting. And one by one, miracles began to happen. Women who had waited years conceived. Homes once filled with sorrow began to sing again. Hope returned to broken hearts. We didn't call it a ministry, but people began to whisper, go to the house of the woman who prays. There, miracles happen. Soon, they called it the House of Hope. But not everyone rejoiced. Religious leaders began to question. How can miracles happen outside our walls? They said. They accused us again of mixing beliefs. But I knew the truth. This was not man's work. This was God's mercy calling his children home. 7 years later, one morning, my husband looked at me and said, it is time to go back. My heart froze. Back to Sinjar? Back to the place of our shame? But deep inside, I felt peace. I knew it was time. When we arrived, people stared as though seeing ghosts. Some wept. Some whispered. The imam and his barren wife had returned, but we were not the same. That Friday, my husband was invited to speak at the mosque. The hall was full. I stood at the back holding our son, my heart pounding. When he spoke, his voice was calm. He told them of our journey, of loss and grace, of how the name of Jesus brought light into our darkness. He did not argue. He did not condemn. He spoke truth wrapped in peace. When he finished, the room was silent. Some looked angry, others confused, but I saw tears in a few eyes. One of them, an old friend, came later in secret. He confessed that he too had dreamed of a man in white who spoke of forgiveness and truth. Slowly, quietly, the same light that reached us began to reach others. Our home in Sinjar became more than a house. It became a refuge. Women came in secret, many of them wives of imams and scholars, broken by silence and shame. We shared our story, how faith is not born in noise, but in surrender. We never promised miracles. We only told them about the night I heard the voice that spoke life into my womb and peace into our hearts. And still today, that voice echoes in me. I have come to understand that my 12 years of waiting were not punishment. They were preparation. Every tear, every empty year was shaping me for something greater, not just motherhood, but ministry. What I once thought was my shame became my testimony. Because the same God who remembered Hannah, who opened Sarah's womb, who visited Mary, he remembered me too. And he is still the same today. If you are listening to my story today, maybe you too are waiting. Maybe your prayers seem unanswered. I want to tell you, do not give up. The God who found me in my darkness will find you where you are. His silence is not absence. His delay is not denial. Sometimes, he lets your night last longer, so your dawn can shine brighter. When I had nothing left, he filled me with himself. And when the world mocked me, he called me his own. Now, my husband and I live quietly, raising our son, helping others believe again. We no longer seek titles or crowds, only hearts hungry for hope. Every barren woman who conceives, every broken soul that finds peace. Each one reminds me, God still speaks. God still heals. God still loves. And so I say to you, hold on. Because when God writes your story, no man can erase it. Even what seems impossible can become your testimony.